So good evening all of you and welcome back to Excelshare Academy. So today we are going to talk about the protein sequencing. So till now we have spoken about and learned about how to purify protein, what are the different chromatographic techniques, electrophoresis techniques, finally to understand the pure protein. Now once we have the protein, the next step is to know the sequence. Once you know the sequence, you can also predict its function. Okay, so let's talk about protein sequencing. So before that, the covalent structure of proteins. So we know that the purification of a protein is usually only a prelude to a detailed biochemical dissection of its structure and function. So what does it mean? It means that from your purified protein, you can actually study your structure and function studies of your protein of interest. Okay. Now, what is it that makes one protein into an enzyme or another into a hormone or structural protein? Or it can be antibody. So what is a property which makes a certain protein to act as enzyme or as hormone or antibody or any other structural protein? So what is a property and how they differ chemically? So everything lies in its sequence. So all these features, whether the protein is going to act as enzyme or hormone or as antibody, everything lies in the sequence, its primary structure. Okay. So now how it is, let's see. So we know that the primary structure is the polypeptide sequence, the amino acid sequences are there, right? Now, after this amino acid sequence, it goes into the secondary structure. So what are the different types of secondary structure? You can have alpha helix and beta sheets. Okay. So depending on the amino acid propensity, the polypeptide chain can have alpha helix or beta sheets or both it can have. Okay. So there are proteins where you can have both alpha as well as beta sheets are there. Then these again fold using all those hydrophobic and hydrogen bonding, it gets converted into folded up to tertiary structure. So one example of tertiary structure protein is myoglobin.
Myoglobin.
Yes, I always refer this as the example because in your exam also they always give myoglobin and hemoglobin as the reference. Okay. Now for the quaternary structure, it is your hemoglobin.
Hemoglobin.
Okay. So same thing is written over here also. So finally, the helix is a part of the tertiary structure of the folded polypeptide, which is itself is one of the subunits. So in case of hemoglobin, you can see that 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 4 subunits are there. Okay. So 2 alpha and 2 beta in case of hemoglobin. So we'll study the structure of hemoglobin in detail. Don't worry about it. So there are 4 levels of protein structure: primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary structure. Okay. Now, so the differences in the primary structure is informative. So if you know the sequence of the protein, you can actually predict its structure. And once you know the structure, you can actually predict its the function of the protein. Okay. Now, how it is done? Do you remember that PyMol I have mentioned you once about the bioinformatics software? So from that also you can understand, if you know the structure of a protein, you can actually guess what kind of function it might have. For example, let us take the example of corona. Okay. Now, we already knew that the coronavirus is having, so how they have done coronavirus again, they actually got its genetic material sequence, whatever proteins was present, they all got sequence. And once they did the alignment, that is, they're checking the sequence similarity with the other viruses. So it was initially classified that coronavirus is coming under the SARS. And we know that SARS already has been accounted for its existence when in China only. So this has already been studied, and so many medicines were also there in the market. So now, because of the corona, we know that corona is belonging to the SARS family. So already the SARS structure is available. Okay. Now the virus which causes the SARS, the structure is available, the proteins are available. Now what they have done is they have sequenced and aligned the structures along with the known one. So what will happen if suppose this is the structure of one protein and this is the structure of another protein. So even if it is not completely overlapping, at least I can say that it is going to have the similar function. Okay. So nowadays, because so many softwares are available, the crystallography softwares are available, it becomes very easy to predict the structure. So already existing structure is there, that is used as the template, and on the top of it you can place your new sequence of amino acid and you can guess the structure. So once you know the structure, you can actually guess the function also. Okay, stop me if you're not able to understand between. Okay, now the proteins with different functions always have different amino acid sequences, obviously. So if you have got two similar proteins, it means what? They are going to have the similar amino acid sequence also. So now if you take insulin from human and if you take the insulin from pig, what do you see? We saw that the insulins are having the similar amino acid sequence. The similar insulin structure was there. So initially, when the diabetes was there and pancreas was not functioning. So initially, when insulin was not produced recombinantly in the industries, so what they have done, the doctors used to isolate the insulin from the pig pancreas, and that insulin was given to the humans. Okay, so this is how initially the diabetes was actually controlled or treated. Then all those ethical problems came, like people are there who are saying that we don't want to use any animal proteins or animal related products. So there are few people, like religious thoughts are there, all those ethical problems started coming out. So that time when these people started thinking about like how to make into a human friendly, like without affecting the religious beliefs of the people, then this recombinant technology came, and then insulin was produced. Now whose insulin sequence was taken? Human insulin sequence was taken, and it was synthesized into the bacteria. Now bacteria doesn't come under non-veg or veg, correct? So then the people were not able to argue, and then the insulin was synthesized using the bacterial culture, cloning was done, and it was produced in that scale. So now the insulin what we get into the market is actually purified from the bacterial culture. Okay, now thousands of human genetic diseases have been traced to the production of defective proteins. So this is also, see, this is what is important about studying all these improper proteins property. So what you can do is, like, there's something called genetic compatibility. Any idea what is genetic compatibility? Anyone? Anyone? Yes? Yes? Anyone? Pratima?
Don't know, ma'am.
Okay. Nobody knows the answer? Ranjan, any idea? No? Nobody knows genetic compatibility? Okay. See, you know what is horoscope compatibility? Horoscope matching. Have you heard of horoscope matching? So in India, people actually, before marriages are being arranged, the parents will check the horoscope compatibility of both the bride and the groom. Correct? Now, if it is matching, then they only go for the marriage, successful marriage, or something. If it is manglik or non-manglik, I don't know much about it, but then they will not go further for the marriage, right? So in India, people go for horoscope matching or horoscope compatibility, whereas outside, many people, especially in America, they go for genetic compatibility. So what do you mean by genetic compatibility? It means that whether the male and the female who are going to get married are, what are the probability that the child they have is going to have any genetic disorder. Okay, so suppose you have someone from your family is having diabetes or cancer, which are inheritable, or from the father side, right? So what can happen? So there are chances that if suppose both male side and female side, if all these inheritable genetic disorder is there, so what is the chances that the child is going to have that particular genetic disorder, right? So over here genetics come is both are, if both your male and female is the carrier, so there are chances that the child is going to have both homozygous condition and might have the genetic disorder, right? So outside what people go do is that they check for the genetic compatibility. So it means that they are going to check whether in future, so whatever the child they bear, whether it is a girl or a boy, depending on the condition, whether they or the unborn child is going to have any genetic disorder or not. Okay, so that is what is being checked, and what this is what I feel is correct to be done. Instead of horoscope, this is the better option, because this will tell you in your future whether the child is going to suffer or not. Because if the child suffers, obviously the parents are also going to suffer, right? Because taking care becomes very difficult. So now we know that, okay, in India it is not being done, but outside it is done. So what they do is they take certain sample from both male and female, and they go for the protein genetic compatibility test. Okay, so from this they will understand whether the child is going to have any problems or not. Now, if suppose the female is pregnant and then they are checking for the genetic disorder by chance, okay, so then also they can go for the treatment, whether the child is being whether the child is having this particular problem is there, if you can treat or not. So that also you can study using all these properties. Okay, so all these examples will come once we start doing the genetics also. Now, perhaps one third of these proteins are defective because single change in their amino acid sequence, and this change in the amino acid sequence will alter the primary structure. Now, once the primary structure is altered, what happens? The overall function is also altered. Okay, so even one mutation is enough to actually disrupt the function of the protein. Finally, on comparing functionally similar proteins from different species, we find that these proteins often have similar amino acid sequences. Okay. Now, this is one example. In 1953, Sanger, he worked out the sequence of amino acid residues in polypeptide chains of hormone insulin. Now, tell me, how many N-terminal residues are there? How many N-terminal are there and how many C-terminal are there?
Two.
Huh?
Two N-terminal.
Yes, correct. So we have got two N-terminal and two C.
Two C-terminal.
Okay. Now both are linked by two disulfide bonds. This you need to remember. Okay. Not the sequence of the insulin, but how many disulfide bonds are there. So how many are there? Actually, it is 3, but it is linked both A and B chain with the help of two disulfide bonds. Okay. So this all you have to remember. Now, so this is the example of bovine insulin. So what do you mean by bovine insulin? Bovine is for whom? Bovine is for
Cattle.
cattle. Very good. So it is joined by disulfide linkages. Okay. Now the A chain that is this one, is identical in human, in pig, in dog, in rabbit, and the sperm whale. Okay. Whereas B chain is common or identical in cow, pig, dog, goat, and horse. Okay. So from this we can understand that we can take the insulin from pig and dog, right? So humans can take insulin from pig and dog because A and B chain are similar. Are you getting the point over here? See, pig and dog here also, pig and dog here also, and we know that it is similar to humans. So that's why I said initially to treat diabetes, pig insulin was taken. So the people can eat pork also, and from the pancreas you can get the insulin also. So anyways, you're going to butcher the pig. So why not use it for the diabetes treatment also? Okay. So far so good. If I hope everything is going now easy, okay, because the difficulty level will increase slowly. Okay, before that, before proceeding, you need to remember this, that N terminal of A is having glycine and B terminal of N terminal of B chain is having phenylalanine. So these two you need to remember. What all? A chain glycine and B chain phenylalanine. Okay, just remember because this will come in further slides. Now we were talking about the protein sequencing. So Sanger, he developed this reagent called FDNB. So it stands for fluoro 2,4-dinitrobenzene. Okay, fluoro dinitrobenzene for the purpose of protein sequencing, and other reagents are dansyl chloride and the dapsyl chloride. Okay, so in this example we will talk about the FDNB. Now in the method of Sanger, so Sanger protein sequencing method, you can only understand the amino terminal amino acids. Getting the point? So only at the N terminus, the first amino acid can be understood using the FDNB treatment or using the Sanger method. Now, how it is done? This you need to remember, okay? How it is done? So you have got the polypeptide chain. So what you're going to do is open up the polypeptide chain. Okay, so this will get, the polypeptide chain will get open up. Then you treat with the FDNB. FDNB stands for 2-fluoro-dinitrobenzene. Okay, so you have 2-fluoro-dinitrobenzene. Now, what will happen? It goes and binds to your N terminal of your protein. Okay. Now, what will happen? It forms the 2,4-dinitrophenyl derivative of the polypeptide chain. So, at your N terminal, this is attached. Okay, your FDNB is attached, and this is your first amino acid. Now, you are going to do the acid hydrolysis. This is called acid hydrolysis because you are going to break the polypeptide chain now. So, you are using 6 molar HCl. Okay. Now, what will happen? You have added the HCl. So, it will give you the 2,4-dinitrophenyl derivative of amino terminal residue and one free amino acid. So, that free amino acid you will identify. Now, how to identify the free amino acid? There's something called TLC. What is TLC? Thin layer chromatography. Okay. So each amino acid will have its different RF value or retention value. Okay. So once you have got the free amino acid, just run the TLC, and from that you can understand which amino acid was present initially in the N terminal. Now the problem with this technique is that you can only identify first N-terminal amino acid. Why? Because rest of the polypeptide chain will be disrupted or denatured. So it cannot be used again. Is it clear? Yes, it is clear. Clear to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, so because the hydrolysis state destroys the polypeptide chain, this procedure cannot be used to sequence the rest of your polypeptide protein. Okay. So, however, it will just help you to understand the amino terminal residue. For example, in case of insulin, two residues, phenyl and glycine is there. So, in this case, what will happen? In this case, in the case of insulin, what will happen? So, you know that there are two N-terminal residues are there. Agree? So, we know that it is phenyl and glycine. So, when you are carrying out the Sanger method on insulin, Sanger method for insulin, so what will happen? So, the procedure is same and there will be two free amino acids. Now, once you run the TLC, what will happen? You will see in the TLC, you will see two spots. So once you actually compare with the standard amino acid, you will find that it is for the phenylalanine and the another one is for the glycine. So you know that there are two chains in the insulin and you have got the two N-terminal residues. Okay. So this is how you carry out for your Sanger method. Now, this is the second method. It is called the Edman degradation method. Now, this is helping in to sequence the entire polypeptide chain. So what in this procedure is done? It is labeling and it then removes only the amino terminal, leaving all the other polypeptide bonds intact. So you can repeat this cycle again and again till you actually get all the amino acid sequence. So of course, which one is better method, Sanger or the Edman? It is the Edman degradation method. So nowadays in most of the companies or research and development companies, they are using Edman degradation method, but in the automated form now. So everything automated machines are there. So you just need to give around your few milligrams or few micrograms of protein sample to the people, and they will give you the entire sequence of the protein. Okay. Now the peptide is here the peptide is reacted with the phenyl isothiocyanide. It is called PTC. Sorry, it is not. It is I, right? Now, so phenyl isothiocyanide. Under mild alkaline condition, it will convert the amino terminal amino acid to the phenyl thiocarbamyl addict. Okay. So from phenyl isothiocyanide, your amino acid goes and combines to become phenyl thiocarbamyl addict. Please remember, okay? So these is important for your part B, in a sense, the short questions. Now the peptide bond which is next to the PTC is then cleaved, and it is cleaved with the help of the trifluoroacetic acid. So trifluoroacetic acid. Now with removal of the amino terminal amino acid as an anilino-thiazoline derivative. Now this is finally detected and you get your first amino acid of your polypeptide chain. Okay, so let's see with the help of the figure how it is being carried out. So in the figure you can see you have got the polypeptide chain is there. It is open up and phenyl isothiocyanate has been added. Okay. Now what is happening? It will form the PTC addict. Phenyl thiocarbamyl addict is formed. Now what is happening? Nucleophilic attack is happening. Because of this nucleophilic attack, it forms the complete ring structure over here. It is formed. Okay. So this is called anilino-thiazoline derivative of the amino acid. Now what is happening? This derivative is formed plus you have got the rest of the polypeptide chain. Okay. Now this particular portion is being removed and identified. Okay. So it will be detected and finally it will be identified. So which amino acid is present. Now from here, you have got the shortened peptide or the polypeptide chain. Again, carry out this procedure from here. That is addition of phenyl isothiocyanate. Then keep on doing or keep on repeating the cycle till you get the entire sequence of your polypeptide chain. Is it clear? I repeat. So polypeptide chain is there. Then you add your phenyl isothiocyanate thiocyanate chemical. Then what you are going to get is the addict. Now with the help of the trifluoroacetic acid, what happens? The bond is broken over here. Okay. So you get your shortened peptide as well as the anilino-thiazolone component. Now this will be identified to get your first amino acid residue of the N-terminal and you will get the polypeptide chain. Now this polypeptide chain will be again reacted with the phenyl isothiocyanate to complete the cycle. So you keep on repeating the cycle till you get the entire sequence of the polypeptide chain. Okay. Is it clear?
Ma'am, here also we are identifying first amino acid of N-terminal, ma'am.
Yes. So always
Okay.
your amino acid sequencing starts from your N-terminal only. Okay. Okay. So this is the same thing written like what I have explained now. So the derivatized amino acid is extracted using the organic solvents and then it is converted into the stable form called phenyl thiohydrogenate and then it is identified. Okay. Now, so the use of sequential reactions carried out under the basic condition and then the acidic condition. So first it was under mild alkaline condition and then with the help of the trifluoroacetic acid, acidic condition was provided, right? So this basic and acidic will control the entire process and not letting the polypeptide chain to get disrupted. Like how in the previous we used 6 molar HCl and because of which what happened, the entire polypeptide chain was of no use for the further amino acid detection, right? So here it is controlled use of both basic and the acidic conditions. Now each reaction with the amino terminal amino acid can go essentially to the completion without affecting the other peptide bonds, and hence after the removal what we can do, again you can label, remove and then identify till you get the series of amino acid sequence. Okay. Now, so the overall accuracy of amino acid sequence declines as the length of the polypeptide chain increases. Now, this is a problem. So, if you have got a very heavy molecule of protein, then opening of the heavy molecule of protein will increase the polypeptide chain length, right? So then it becomes difficult to carry out the sequencing. So what people do usually is they break the larger polypeptide sequence into the smaller fragments, and then again, so what will happen? Let us say that I have got such a big polypeptide chain and I made into two fragments. So how many total fragments now? 1, 2 and 3. So then how many N terminals I'm having now? Yes.
Only one.
Are you sure? See, whatever how many fragments you're breaking, always if this is N terminal, this is C terminal, again this will be C, this will be N, this will be C, this will be N, right? So again you
Three, ma'am.
have 3 N terminal will be there. So then what you can do? You can purify these 3 fragments separately and then carry out the sequence. Okay. Then later you can again check which is overlapping where, so that you can get the proper linear sequence of the amino acids. So what you can do is, see, suppose you have made these 3 fragments. Okay, you got the sequence, but now you don't know which one is what, right? From where it is starting. So what you do is, in the first sequence you made 3. In the second you can just have only 1 cut, and in the second condition you can have cut over here. Okay, so what will happen? I'll have a sequence N over here, C here, N over here, and C over here. In the third condition, I'll have like this. So all these combinations of fragments will give you the overlapping sequence of the amino acid. And finally, then you can get the correct sequence. Like from the starting to the end, you can get the amino acid sequence. Are you getting this point? Or should I repeat?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. So the very large polypeptide must be broken down into smaller pieces to be sequenced efficiently. So what they are going to do, first cleave the protein into specific fragments. So you can either use chemical or enzymatic methods are there. So enzymatic method means there are certain proteases which will cleave the polypeptide chains at particular amino acid residues only. For example, let us say that trypsin is there. So trypsin will cleave the polypeptide chain into fragments wherever lysine and arginine is present. Okay. You need to remember this. So trypsin is there. It will cleave the polypeptide chain at the C terminal of arginine and lysine. Okay. So wherever in your polypeptide chain total number of arginine and lysine are present, so those many fragments you're going to get. Now, if suppose you are using cyanogen bromide, a chemical, it is going to cleave at the C terminal of methionine. So if you're using chemical treatment, so you know that at the C terminal, the last amino acid is going to be your methionine. Okay. So if you know, then you can actually guess the sequence of the polypeptide chain. Now, if suppose you have got any disulfide bonds, so that needs to be broken down. So with how you're going to break the disulfide bonds? DTT,
BME.
BME, correct. Okay, so these are the different methods by which you can break the disulfide bonds. Now, each fragment is purified and then it is used sequence with the help of the Edmond procedure. Okay. Now, so the order in which fragments appear in the original protein is determined, and suppose any disulfide bonds are there, so that will be located. Now, So till now we talked about like how if suppose there is a large fragments is there, so you can actually break down. Okay, now this is about the disulfide bond. So how you can remove? So there are different methods they have discussed. So we know one is with the DTT and the other method is using the performic acid. Now what you can see is over here is that if you're using performic acid, you can see cystic acid residues are formed. Okay, what you need to understand is that when these kinds of ends are made, okay, for example in this case you can see that SO3 minus SO3 minus has been added. So because of which what will happen, again there won't be any back disulfide bond formation. Are you getting the point? It means that once it is broken down using the performic acid, again it will not combine back to form the disulfide bond, okay, because of the presence of the SO3 minus group over here. Similarly, if you reduce with the help of the DTT, so what DTT will do? It is doing the reduction. Reduction means adding the H, right? So we know that in the disulfide S is there. If you reduce with the help of DTT, what will happen? This group will become SH and SH, correct? Now there are chances that these SH molecule will go back to form the disulfide bond again. So,
Ma'am, voice is breaking, ma'am.
so So if suppose this will go and again form the disulfide bond formation, so what will happen? Again, the main purpose of protein sequencing we are not able to achieve, right? So if you are using DTT for your protein sequencing, you need to do another step called acetylation by the IAA, that is iodoacetate. Okay. So what will happen then? The acetyl group will be added over here so that it doesn't go back and form the reformation of the disulfide bond. Okay. So to prevent this acetylation by the iodoacetate, it will be done. So there are two methods, that is oxidation of cysteine residue using the performic acid. It will give you the cystic acid residues. Please remember, okay, cystic acid residues. If you are doing the reduction by DTT, so what will happen? The cysteine from your disulfide bond, it will form the cysteine amino acids, right? Then it will be, there are chances that the reformation of disulfide bond will take place. So you need to carry out the another step, that is acetylation by IAA, that is iodoacetate. So it will prevent the reformation of disulfide bonds. Okay, so these are the two methods by which you can actually break the disulfide bond. Now, these are the list of the proteins which you really need to by heart. Okay, and the cyanogen bromide also. So the chemical reagent which is used to cleave the polypeptide chain. So let's discuss over here. So as trypsin, as I mentioned before, so in the case of trypsin, it is the C terminal of your lysine and arginine. You can also remember the positively charged amino acids. Okay. Now then you have got the submaxillaris protease. It is the C terminal of arginine. Chymotrypsin, aromatic amino acids, but the C terminal. This is very important to understand. Otherwise, if you break the polypeptide chain wrong order, you cannot then get the correct complete sequence of the amino acids. Okay, so I'll tell you one example how to do this thing. So please remember, trypsin is the C terminal of lysine arginine. Chymotrypsin is aromatic amino acids, okay, C terminal. Then again the protease, Staphylococcus aureus protease, it is the C terminal of aspartic and the glutamic acid. Then aspartic N protease, it is the aspartic and the glutamic acid N terminal. Pepsin, again it is the N terminal of your aromatic amino acids. Then you have got the endoproteinase, that is C terminal of lysine, and cyanogen C terminal of methionine. So mainly in the exam, they always give about trypsin, chymotrypsin, then pepsin, and the cyanogen bromide. So if you can remember these four also, this is more than enough. So let's repeat: trypsin, lysine arginine C terminal, chymotrypsin aromatic amino acid C terminal, pepsin aromatic amino acids but N terminal, then you have got cyanogen bromide C terminal of methionine. Okay, so let's see one example. So you have got the polypeptide chain and the disulfide bond is also given. So what is the procedure? Hydrolyze the protein, separate the amino acids using the Edmond sequencing method. So you will get all these answer. Okay, so what is the answer over here? You have got alanine 5, cysteine 2, aspartic acid 4, right? Glutamic acid 2, then phenyl 1, glycine 3. So all you got the combinations. Now it is saying that it has got the 38 amino acid residues. So trypsin will cleave 3 times. Why? Because we see that how many arginine and lysines are there. So you have got arginine 1 over here and 2 lysines are there. So trypsin will make how many cuts? 3 cuts. Clear? Am I going fast?
Ma'am, voice again breaking.
So how many are there? So trypsin means it is the C terminal of arginine and lysine, right? So how many arginine are there? 1. Lysine, how many? 2 are there. So trypsin is going to make 3 times cut. Okay. So if suppose I break or if I use trypsin to cleave this polypeptide chain, so how many fragments I should get? Sorry. How many fragments I should get? If it is a polypeptide chain and 3 cuts are going to be made, 1, 2 and 3. So how many fragments? 4 fragments. Okay. Now if I use cyanogen bromide, so how many are there? It is a C terminal of methionine, correct? So 2 cuts. So 1 and 2. So you will get 3 fragments. 1 second. So now if you are doing the FDNB hydrolysis, that is your Sanger method. So you know that E is the E or the glutamic acid is present at your N terminal. Okay, so everything is now giving you the information about the sequence of the amino acids. Okay, now let's see the next part. Okay, so now if you have the polypeptide chain is there and trypsin. So from initial we know that if you cut trypsin, if you do with the trypsin cleavage, how many fragments you're gonna get? 4 fragments are going to get, right? So you now have 4 fragments over here. So T1, T2, T3, T4. T stands for trypsin over here. Okay, so you have got the 4 fragments. Now if you do the cleavage with the cyanogen, there were 2 methionine groups. So that's why you got 3 fragments. Okay. Now you need to do the overlap. What do you mean by overlap? You need to get the correct sequence of the polypeptide chain. Now, if you see over here overlapping, you can see that this E, G, A, A, Y, whatever is present, you can also find the same sequence over here, E, G and all this thing, right? And from the FDNB method, we know that E is the our first N terminal amino acid. So what does it mean? It means that this is my first fragment. This is my first fragment. Okay. So I'll write my first fragment over here. So till where I'll write? Till M I'm gonna write because till M it is present. Correct? This thing. So this becomes my first fragment. So yes, T2 and C1 I got as my first fragment. Now you need to see where it is overlapping. So we see that you have got PRGASM, GASM. Okay. So now where do you see in the case of trypsin? So you see that you have got GASM. GASM over here it is present. Correct. So after C1 or T2 I get as T1. So wherever it is stopping, GASM. So now after M I know it is going to be ALIK. So I'll write as ALIK till K it is done. Now where do you see LIK further in the case of
C3.
very good C3. So ALIK you see ALIK, right? Now from here you need to write the further sequence. So till M you got again, correct, over here. So now it has been done. Now you again see what is the further sequence. So we know that this is done, this is done, this is done, last is DCV and all. Now in the case also this is there, but you to be very careful how it has been placed. So after M it is there. Now you have to see how to place the rest. So you will check over here and then over here. So finally you understand that this is only present directly. So you can see the overlap. One second, let me clear. So you can see over here, this overlap is present. Correct? Can you see? This overlap, CGPM or CD, this thing, it is given. DCV DCV, HSG, HSG. Can you see? So that has been
Yes, ma'am.
over here. Okay. So this is how you actually get the entire sequence of your polypeptide chain. Okay. So is it okay? So it's just like your maths. So already the sequence has been given to you. You just need to overlap and get the correct sequence of the amino acids. So can you do it? Yeah. So I can then,
Ma'am. Yes.
yes. So I can give you them questions based on this. Okay. So similarly, if it is trypsin, so now in this case, it is written that it is trypsin and all, right? So in few cases, they won't write. So you need to understand yourself. So how you will understand? This is a C terminal of lysine, arginine, lysine. C terminal of methionine. C terminal of methionine. So from this you should understand these were from the cyanogen bromide, these are from the trypsin. Now if suppose it was chymotrypsin, then you can see F, Y or W at the end. Okay. Now if it is pepsin, then it is N terminal, right? So if it is N terminal, then it has to be, suppose like this I have. Okay. So what will happen if it is the N terminal? I will not see phenyl. The cut will be made over here. Okay. C means it is included. The amino acid is included. If it is N terminal, it will be made cut over here. So that amino acid will not be included. Clear now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good. So this is how we get the sequence of the polypeptide chain. Okay. Now, how do you locate disulfide bonds? So initially, when we started the protein sequencing, we actually disrupted the disulfide bonds, right? But now you need to know. So we know that the cysteines are present. So you can see that how many cysteines are there? 2 cysteines are there. Correct. You can see over here 2 cysteines are there. So there is a possibility that one disulfide bond will be present. Okay. So now how to determine that? So if the primary structure includes disulfide bonds, the locations are determined using another additional step. A sample of the protein is again cleaved with a reagent such as trypsin only without breaking the disulfide bonds. So initially you got the sequence over here, but we just need to know where the disulfide bonds are present. So what you're going to do, take the another batch of protein, just cleave with the help of the trypsin and don't break any disulfide bonds. Now the resulting peptides are separated by the electrophoresis and compared with the original set of peptides which is generated by the trypsin. So what you will see, for each disulfide bond, 2 of the original peptides will be missing and the larger peptide will appear. So when you run, so you will see so many peptides are there. In few cases you won't see. So from this you will understand where exactly the disulfide bonds are present. Okay. So that was all about the protein sequencing. We learned about Sanger and Edmond degradation, of which Edmond degradation is the best one. And nowadays in the companies we use Edmond degradation. Okay, so thank you people for listening. If any doubts are there, you can ask me now.